Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, May 26th, 2026 at 3:33 in the afternoon. We're here on a recess from the floor to hear an amendment to S71 by Representative Greer. Representative, thank you for joining us and like to let us know about your proposal.
Thank you, Chairman Cott. So the amendment to S71, there's two instances of amendment, and pretty much it revolves around consent, around sensitive information, sensitive data. And pretty much the objective behind it is, with sensitive information, and obviously I don't have the list quite in front of me right now, but there's a long provided list in the bill about what constitutes sensitive data. And pretty much when it comes down to consent and us talking about all these variables that people's data may be access to determine their, different identities or demographics or information that's sensitive, trying to realize that there's, and I don't know how to exactly frame this right now at the moment, but where it's difficult to consent to that and where there's really it's a difficult conversation. I don't think people are truly consenting when they agree to give their information over to a company that plans to use it for purposes that they are not, being transparent about. So it's about transparency and consent. That's the summary of it.
Any questions? Representative Greer?
Is the second instance amendment also pertaining to sensitive data as the first instance of amendment is?
Thank you. Thank you for your interest in privacy.
Always.
Rick?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Rick Sagal with the Office of Legislative Counsel. So happy to, pretty short amendment, but happy to go on the screen and then we can discuss any implications or any questions that you all may have about it. So as Representative Greer said, there are two instances of amendment. The first is in the data minimization section, subsection A, subdivision 4. I'll show you where that is. There, go back up to the top. So 2415E, the duties of controller. So a controller shall, subdivision 4, regarding the sensitive data of a consumer. And by this is 5.2, this is what you all reported out on Friday. A, not process sensitive data unless the consumer has provided consent and unless the processing is reasonably necessary in relation to the purposes for which the sensitive data is collected. So no change to that or no proposed change. Representative Greer's amendment is to B right there. So the amendment would strike out this phrase here, unless the consumer has provided consent. So it would be basically a ban on the sale of sensitive data. That's the first proposal of amendment. The second is in the consumer health data section at the very end of the bill, 2415K. You may remember there's 4 things that a person cannot do when it comes to consumer health data. Providing an employer contractor with access to consumer health data, unless that employer contractor is subject to a contractual or statutory duty of confidentiality, the geofence restriction, and then 4 is where the amendment is. And again, removes this consent piece. So because consumer health data is also sensitive data, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to ban the sale of sensitive data, but then permit it just for consumer. Of course, you all could make that decision, but it would be confusing. So if you're going to adopt the amendment, I would suggest both would be up or down together.
Page are you on? Sorry.
The second instance is on page 56.
Thank you.
Let me reframe that. You could just ban the sale of consumer health data and not sensitive data. But if you're going to ban sensitive data, you also should ban this because it is considered sensitive data.
Questions for Rick?
Yeah, so to be clear, I think we're, and I'm probably replaying what we talked about on Friday, but the words without first obtaining consumer's consent is basically an opt-in. So the consumer would have to opt in for the sale of sensitive data, health data, in order for it to be sold or offered or sale, or in the previous section, cost.
Right.
Comment, or you just want to? Yeah, so
Got to vote on.
what's that?
We got to vote on this one way or the other.
Yeah, well, I kind of like the amendment, but we also were at a point on Friday that my sense of what people who know a little better about the politics was that we were up against a set of demands, I guess, around, and I'm not sure where this one fell, but it sounded like it was in that list of demands. The puzzlement that I had about last Friday, though, when we asked the chamber whether they supported what we did, and it was a little equivocal in my view in terms of support or not. So I don't know what that means in terms of where we're going forward, and if we might be. I'm worried, frankly, that the Senate might come back and say, well, and at the request of folks, say we want something more, kind of thing. So
That's not my sense, but
what's that?
that's not my sense where things are going.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
I would say that we're walking a fine line of moving this and having it become law or not. And we had these discussions on Friday as well, and we decided to go the route that we're proposing to the House.
Yeah, I mean, I support this amendment. I think this was in the piece that I started off on Friday saying that I had at the beginning of the process, had asked that we come back to this as one of the priorities of having a strong bill passed, and we never came back to discuss this. And then VPART testified about the inclusion of this and how we never discussed it. I think as far as doing the town halls that the speaker requested from last year, when we paused this bill from moving forward last year, in addition to just conversations in general, like the sale of people's sensitive data, their location, their immigration status, like their gender identity, things like that, is like the single most thing that I've heard from people from the public and from constituents being afraid of when it comes to data privacy bills and not protecting that piece. I think because we passed such a weak data minimization, if not really even a data minimization standard, it was really a consent, like a disclosure. I think that the consent, I mean, as we heard, the consent can be buried in a 100-page privacy policy. And then also if there's been so many articles about things like weather apps, collecting people's data and saying basically like you expect to open your weather app and that you could see your weather and it's going to be based on your location, with those weather apps never telling you that they're secretly selling your data behind the scenes. That happened with Gravy Analytics, where it was like the Grindr apps and things like that. So there's the number of news stories where it comes from an app discloses one thing that they're going to do with the data and then they end up selling the data. I think this feels like since we're not doing strong enforcement, we're not doing strong data minimization, this is one thing that the public is asking for the most, and that other states have done that I feel like we could do to actually make this bill matter at all.
I'll just more raising a concern. I have some concerns about this amendment. I think we need to realize specifically in the nonprofit sector, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that serve marginalized groups. And this, if somebody, and a lot of those marginalized groups, that data, the fact that they are marginalized is based on sensitive data. And my concern would be that now they can't sell that data. So if there is somebody that is looking for support that is in one of these marginalized groups, they find one trusted source. That source is not able to give that information, provide that information, because we're not talking about behind their back. We're talking about they have to opt in to sell this data. I feel like there could be a loss of additional services because a lot of these nonprofits can say, well, this group helps with this and this group helps with that.
Others? Abby?
I certainly understand the point of the amendment, and I think big picture nationally, I would support it, but I don't think, and I think that something like this could be a next step, maybe for next year, but I think to Herb's point about sort of what is the political environment, I think passing this amendment would stall this bill. I think we would not end up with data privacy this year. And I don't think Vermont is ready for this until there's more of a broader approach with more states going this direction. And so my preference or what I think is I think we should not support this amendment and be looking next year to what are the, assuming we can get data privacy in place, what are next steps to continue to protect Vermonters more? I think Maryland has read a ban of sensitive data, and I know that enforcement is an issue, but I don't think there's an outright ban on sale of sensitive data outside of. And if we had more time, I think there are steps that maybe there are pieces of sensitive data that we could have added to the list of where we're not selling. We don't have the time to do that.
I'll just, in the same direction, I think I truly would like this to be the law, and we need to give businesses an opportunity to get into this regulatory scheme before we make all of these changes. If I were in business, I would not be holding this information. There's no benefit for me to hold it. And I hope that even having this law will help businesses understand that this is not the kind of information that they should be collecting. This is not the kind of thing that this could be difficult for them going forward. And with this law in place. So I hear the concern, Monique, that this bill doesn't do enough to protect consumers, and it does more than what we have today. And I don't want to do anything that will jeopardize getting this passed.
Anyone else?
So can I just follow up? So, and I'm turning to you folks because you know the lay of the land a little better than I do. Do you think that including this jeopardize passage?
Emily?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I guess I will just say that particularly, as a marginalized person, while I understand the importance of, and as a nonprofit worker, I understand the importance of having a system that can create spaces for folks to be able to gather based on various forms of sensitive identity. But I also, on the other hand, don't necessarily want those identities, or at least my own identities, exploited and placing me in a highly visible and potentially vulnerable position by having some of this highly sensitive information out in the world. I think I really get worried about the fact that many of our small businesses are also building their businesses on larger platforms and larger programs that do collect this kind of data and sell it. So it's not necessarily, I'm pointing the finger at Vermont businesses. It's really kind of the larger infrastructure that businesses find themselves in. And so, especially looking at the regional landscape and the national landscape and just the need or what questioning the need on whether we need to be collecting this data to begin with, let alone store it and sell it. I personally am in support of this. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us around the table would agree that this bill isn't really, I think, we wished it was. And I think there are several of us around the table that have a pretty strong commitment to working on that in future bienniums. But at this point, I feel like it's important for me to be a political pragmatist, and really we're right at the last end. I think anything that is going to slow this down at all will just kill it. And I'd rather have something that I don't love more than have nothing at all. And so that's kind of where I am.
So I know for many of us, this bill doesn't go far enough. And I know for some of us, this bill goes too far. And I think that we have all come together as a committee to advance this bill because we know it makes sense to get something on the books. But this is not a weak bill, but it's not the very strongest bill we could have put out here either. But I think it sets a basis for us to start protecting Vermonters. We have that opportunity before us right now. And my belief is that if we pass this amendment, that we lose that opportunity. So I ask a show of hands to find this amendment unfavorable.
Sorry, how did you?
Unfavorable.
Unfavorable. Thank you.
And those who find it favorable.
My camera's not working, but I do find it favorable.
So it's 9-2. Unfavorable. Okay. Being called back to the floor, I think we'll be taking this up shortly. You have the vote. You can say you find it unfavorable. 9-2 vote.